Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Orbital Defense Station New Haven, watching the stars disappear. One by one, they vanished behind the massive shapes of alien ships dropping out of hyperspace. He had never seen so many vessels in one place. The enemy fleet stretched across the entire horizon of space like a dark wall blocking out the universe itself. "Sir, we're counting over 10,000 ships," reported Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. Her voice shook slightly. "They're positioning themselves around Earth in a perfect sphere formation." Jake nodded grimly. For months, humanity had received warnings from friendly alien traders about something called the Coalition of Seven. 7 powerful alien races had joined together and decided that humans were too dangerous to live. They said humans spread too fast, fought too hard, and asked too many questions. Now they had come to finish what they started. Captain Lisa Bennett's voice crackled over the communication system from the USS Liberty, humanity's most advanced warship. "Jake, we've got maybe 200 ships total. They've got 10,000. The math doesn't look good from where I'm sitting." "I know, Lisa, but we don't run. That's not who we are." Down on Earth, Dr. Nathan Carter was already running through the underground corridors of the Colorado facility. Red lights flashed everywhere, and alarms screamed warnings that everyone already knew. The end had come. Nathan burst into the control room where his team was, frantically working at computers and control panels. "Status report," he shouted over the noise. "Operation Phoenix is ready," called out Dr. Maria Santos. "All the data archives are loaded. Human genetic codes, our history, our technology blueprints. Everything we are is packed into those ships." Nathan looked at the screen showing dozens of small, fast ships hidden across the solar system. Each one carried the complete story of humanity. If they could launch them before the attack began, maybe somewhere in the galaxy humans could live again. "Launch them now," Nathan ordered. "Send them to every hiding place we prepared. Scatter them like seeds in the wind." In space above, Jake watched as the alien fleet began to move. The ships were beautiful and terrible at the same time. Some looked like living crystals that bent light around them. Others were perfect metal spheres covered in weapons. The largest ships were strange combinations of organic and machine parts that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. "All Earth forces. This is Admiral Kate Morgan," came a voice over all communication channels. "We know what we face today. We know we probably won't see tomorrow. But we're going to show these aliens what humans do when someone tries to wipe us out. We fight." The alien attack began without warning. Beams of energy lanced out from their ships, but these weren't normal weapons. Where the beams touched human ships, the metal didn't explode or melt. It simply disappeared, erased from existence as if it had never been there at all. Jake watched in horror as the USS Liberty took a direct hit. Half the ship just vanished, leaving the other half spinning helplessly in space. Lisa's voice came through the radio one last time. "Tell them we tried, Jake. Tell them we never gave up." The attack on Earth's surface was even worse. The quantum disruptors turned entire cities into empty craters. New York disappeared first, then London, Beijing, Moscow, and dozens of other major population centers. 12 billion people lived on Earth. In just 6 hours, most of them were gone. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez had left her station and was now helping to evacuate civilians to the few remaining transport ships. She grabbed children and elderly people, pushing them toward the escape pods and shuttles. Every ship that could fly was being loaded with whoever could be saved. "Hurry, hurry," she shouted, lifting a crying child into her arms. "We don't have much time." The defense stations were falling one by one. Jake's station shook as enemy fire hammered against its shields. Through the windows, he could see the Earth burning. The beautiful blue and green planet that had been humanity's home for thousands of years was turning black and gray. "Sir," called one of his officers, "the emergency bunkers are reporting in. Dr. Carter got the Phoenix ships launched. They're jumping to hyperspace now." Jake felt a small spark of hope. Maybe it wasn't completely over. Maybe humans would survive somewhere out there among the stars. But right now he had to focus on getting as many people as possible off the planet. Captain Sam Turner commanded one of the evacuation fleets, a group of converted cargo ships and passenger liners. His job was to get civilians to safety. But where was safe when an entire galaxy wanted you dead? He made the hard choice that many others were making that day. He would take his ships to the outer rim, to places so far away and empty that maybe the aliens wouldn't bother to look. "All ships follow me," he broadcast to his small fleet. "We're going dark. Full communication silence from now on. We're going to disappear. As the last evacuation ships jumped to hyperspace, Jake's station finally fell. The quantum disruptors tore through the hull, and everything went white. But Jake's last thought wasn't about dying. It was about the ships that had escaped, the people who would survive, and the idea that maybe somehow this wasn't the end of humanity's story. Across the galaxy, the news spread quickly. The humans were gone. The dangerous, aggressive species that had worried so many civilizations had been wiped out completely. The Coalition of Seven announced that the operation had been a complete success. Every human world had been cleansed. Every human ship had been destroyed. The threat was over, but they were wrong. Hidden in the dark spaces between stars, 200,000 humans lived on in scattered ships and secret bases. They had lost their home, lost their people, lost almost everything that mattered. But they had not lost the one thing that made them human, the absolute refusal to give up. In the empty void of space, Captain Sam Turner looked at his small fleet of survivors and made a promise to himself and to the memory of Earth. "They think they erased us," he whispered. "They're going to learn just how wrong they are." 10 years had passed since Earth died. Captain Sam Turner floated in the command center of Haven's Rest, a hollowed-out asteroid that had become humanity's secret capital. Around him, the survivors had built a hidden city inside the rock. Gardens grew under artificial suns. Children played in corridors carved from stone, and workshops hummed with the sound of people building a future from nothing. Sam was no longer the desperate evacuation leader who had fled Earth's destruction. Time and loss had changed him into something harder, smarter, more patient. He studied star charts showing coalition patrol routes, trade lanes, and military bases. Every piece of information was precious. Every weakness was noted and remembered. "The Cortex supply convoy will pass through the Vega system in 6 days," reported Ryan Phillips, sliding into the room like a shadow. Ryan had become humanity's best spy, able to disguise himself as dozens of different alien species. His face was scarred from multiple surgeries that had altered his features, and his eyes held secrets that would shock the galaxy if anyone knew them. "What kind of supplies?" Sam asked. "Raw materials for quantum disruptors. The same weapons they used on Earth." Sam's jaw tightened. "Then we hit them hard." In the lower levels of Haven's Rest, Dr. Maria Santos worked in laboratories that would have amazed the scientists of old Earth. She had spent 10 years studying captured alien technology, learning how their enemies thought and built their tools of war. Her greatest discovery was elegant in its simplicity. Every coalition race relied on the same basic energy frequencies for their shields and weapons. Change the frequency slightly and their defenses became useless. "The cloaking system is ready for field testing," Maria announced to her team. "Our ships will be completely invisible to their sensors. They won't know we exist until we're shooting at them." Lieutenant Colonel Beth Williams trained in the combat simulator, fighting holographic enemies that moved and thought like real coalition soldiers. Beth had lost her entire family when Earth burned, and she had spent every day since learning how to make the aliens pay for it. She was humanity's sword, sharp and deadly and always ready to strike. "The new weapons are incredible," she told Sam during their daily briefing. "We can punch through their armor like it's made of paper. The problem is we still don't have enough ships or people to take them in a straight fight." "Then we don't fight straight," Sam replied. "We fight smart." The first ghost attack happened near a Velthan mining world called Kepler 9. A coalition patrol of 6 ships was escorting a cargo vessel full of processed metals when humans struck from nowhere. The patrol never saw their attackers. Energy bolts came out of empty space, tearing through their shields and hulls. In less than 5 minutes, all 7 alien ships were destroyed or disabled. The human ships appeared just long enough to rescue the alien slaves working the cargo vessel, then vanished again like they had never existed. The freed aliens told stories of masked figures who spoke in a language they didn't recognize, who moved with military precision, and who seemed to hate the coalition with a burning passion. Similar attacks began happening across the galaxy. Coalition supply lines were cut. Patrol fleets disappeared without sending distress signals. Mining operations found their guards dead and their workers gone. The attacks were always swift, always precise, and always left no trace of who had done them. Admiral Kate Morgan commanded the human fleet from a mobile base built inside a giant asteroid ship. Kate had survived the destruction of her original command and spent 10 years building humanity's hidden navy. 200 ships now answered her call, all of them invisible to coalition sensors, all of them crewed by people who remembered Earth. The aliens are starting to panic, she told the other leaders during a secret meeting. Their military reports talk about ghost fleets and phantom raiders. They have no idea that we're still alive. Dr. Alex Johnson had made perhaps the most important discovery of all. While studying alien biology, he found that humans were naturally immune to the mind control technology that several coalition races used to keep their slave species obedient. More than that, humans could build devices that would break those mental chains for others. We can free entire worlds, Alex explained excitedly. The Zephyrians, the Altarians, the Proxima colonies, they're all under mental domination. But we can wake them up. Ryan Phillips brought back intelligence from his deep cover missions that changed everything. The coalition isn't as united as they pretend, he reported. 3 of the member races are getting nervous about Valthan leadership. They're starting to question whether destroying humanity was really necessary. Can we use that? Sam asked. Maybe, if we play it right. The rescue mission at the Corthex prison mines was humanity's boldest operation yet. 50,000 humans had been captured and enslaved, working in horrible conditions to extract rare metals for coalition weapons. Most of the galaxy thought these prisoners were the last humans alive. Beth Williams led the assault personally. Human ships appeared around the mining facility like angry ghosts, their weapons cutting through the automated defenses. Rescue teams stormed the underground tunnels, fighting their way past Corthex guards to reach the prison levels. "You're human," whispered one of the prisoners when Beth's team found them. The man was thin and scarred, but his eyes blazed with hope. "We thought everyone was dead. We thought we were the last ones." "You're not alone," Beth told him. "You were never alone." The evacuation took 18 hours. 50,000 people who had given up hope were lifted from the darkness and brought to safety. When they saw Haven's Rest, saw the cities humans had built in secret, saw the children who had been born free among the stars, many of them wept. Captain Dan Foster had been one of those prisoners. Now he stood in the command center with Sam Turner, looking at star charts and planning the next operation. The human population had doubled overnight, and with it came new skills, new knowledge, and new determination to make the coalition pay. "They think we're extinct," Dan said quietly. "They think they won." Sam smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Let them think that a little longer. When we reveal ourselves, I want it to be at a time and place of our choosing. I want them to understand exactly what they created when they tried to erase us. In the deepest part of Haven's Rest, in a chamber known only to a few, the archives from Operation Phoenix were carefully preserved. The complete genetic code of humanity, the sum total of their culture and knowledge, the story of a species that refused to die. Soon Sam knew it would be time to show the galaxy that humanity had not just survived. They had evolved into something new, something the coalition should fear. Admiral Kate Morgan stood in the command center of the battleship Retribution, watching a coalition fleet tear itself apart. 15 years after Earth's destruction, humanity had grown strong enough to pick their battles. Today they had chosen to reveal themselves to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. The Valthan Third Fleet was fighting a desperate battle against rebelling Altarian colonies when human ships materialized out of nowhere. Kate's fleet of 50 vessels appeared in perfect formation, their weapons already locked onto coalition targets. The aliens had been so focused on crushing the rebellion that they never saw humanity coming. "All ships, this is Admiral Morgan," she broadcasted on all frequencies. "You tried to erase us 15 years ago. Today, you learn that humanity remembers everything." The battle was over in minutes. Human weapons designed specifically to counter coalition technology cut through their shields like they weren't there. The quantum disruptors that had destroyed Earth were useless against human armor that bent space itself around the ships. When the shooting stopped, half the Valthan fleet was destroyed and the other half was running for their lives. The Altarian rebels couldn't believe what they had seen. Ships had appeared from empty space, fought with weapons beyond their understanding, and saved them from certain death. When they tried to contact the mysterious fleet, they received a simple message: humanity stands with those who fight for freedom. Engineer Tony Baker was proud of his storm drive technology. The new engines could move human ships faster than anything the coalition had ever built, while keeping them completely invisible to sensors. Tony had lost his wife and children on Earth, and he had poured his grief into creating the tools humanity needed to strike back. "The drive systems are working perfectly," he reported to Kate during the fleet's next mission briefing. "We can be anywhere in the galaxy within days, hit hard, and disappear before they know what happened." Human shipyards hidden in nebulae and asteroid fields worked day and night building the new generation of warships. Every vessel was a masterpiece of human engineering, combined with captured alien technology. The Coalition had taught humanity how to build quantum disruptors. Now humans were building something much worse. Lieutenant Colonel Beth Williams led her strike teams in their most important mission yet. The planet Zarian Prime was home to 50 million aliens living under Velthan mental control. For generations, the crystalline overlords had used brain implants to turn entire populations into willing slaves. Beth's job was to change that. "Remember, we're not here to conquer," she told her teams as they prepared for the assault. "We're here to liberate. Every person we free is another voice speaking against the Coalition." The attack on Zarian Prime became a legend that spread across the galaxy. Human soldiers appeared in the planet's cities like avenging spirits, moving too fast for the Velthan guards to track. They carried devices that Dr. Alex Johnson had designed, machines that could break the mental chains holding entire populations in slavery. When the liberation devices activated, 50 million minds suddenly remembered what freedom felt like. The Velthans found themselves facing not just human soldiers, but an entire planet of people who had just realized they had been slaves their whole lives. The revolution was swift and absolute. Captain Dan Foster commanded the deep strike mission that hit the Coalition's main communication hub at Nexus Station. The massive space station coordinated military operations across half the galaxy, and its destruction would blind the Coalition fleet for months. "We go in hard and fast," Dan briefed his crews. "Plant the charges, rescue any prisoners, and get out before reinforcements arrive." The mission was a complete success. Nexus Station erupted in a series of explosions that could be seen from 3 star systems away. But more important than the destruction was what the humans found in the station's databases. Complete records of Coalition war crimes, including the planned genocide of 17 other species. Dr. Alex Johnson worked frantically to decode the captured data. What he found made him sick with anger. The Coalition hadn't just tried to destroy humanity. They had successfully wiped out 6 other species in the past 1,000 years, and they were planning to eliminate 11 more in the coming decades. "We have to stop them," Alex told Sam Turner during an emergency meeting. "If we don't act, billions more innocent people will die." Sam nodded grimly. "Then we act. But we do it smart. We turn their own crimes against them." The broadcast went out across the entire galaxy simultaneously. Human ships appeared in orbit around every major Coalition world, transmitting the evidence of genocide on all communication frequencies. The message was simple and devastating. The Coalition has committed crimes against all life in the galaxy. These are the proofs. This ends now. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Planets that had been loyal to the Coalition for centuries suddenly found themselves facing massive protests and rebellions. Species that had never questioned Velthan leadership began demanding answers. The carefully maintained unity of the Coalition started cracking like old stone. Ryan Phillips brought back intelligence from the Coalition capital that confirmed their strategy was working. 3 member species have formally withdrawn from the Coalition, he reported. The Hegemony Council is in chaos. Some of them are calling for peace negotiations. "And the others?" Sam asked. "The others want to finish what they started 15 years ago. They want to find every human in the galaxy and kill us all." Admiral Kate Morgan was ready for that fight. The human fleet had grown to over 200 ships, each one more advanced than anything the Coalition possessed. More importantly, they now had allies. Dozens of liberated worlds had contributed ships and crews to what was being called the Free Alliance. The Battle of Kepler System marked humanity's first open engagement as a known force. A Coalition fleet of 300 ships had come to retake the liberated worlds. They found Kate's fleet waiting for them, supported by rebel forces from a dozen different species. "This is Admiral Kate Morgan of the Human Liberation Fleet," she broadcasted to the enemy force. "You have one chance to surrender and face justice for your crimes. Refuse, and we will show you the same mercy you showed Earth. The Coalition commander's response was to open fire with every weapon he had. It was a mistake he didn't live to regret. The battle lasted 6 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the Coalition force. But the real victory came afterward, when the surviving Coalition crews were treated as prisoners of war rather than executed. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Humans fought hard, but they fought with honor. Captain Sam Turner received reports from across the galaxy as their campaign gained momentum. World after world was throwing off Coalition rule. The mysterious humans who had appeared from nowhere were becoming legends, stories told in whispers on 1,000 different worlds. They tried to erase us, Sam said quietly, looking at star charts showing liberated systems marked in blue. Instead, they created something they should fear much more than they ever feared the old humanity. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, now a commander, herself was working with refugee coordinators to help freed populations rebuild their lives. "What do we do after we win?" she asked Sam during one of their planning sessions. Sam smiled. "We make sure this never happens again. We become the guardians the galaxy needs." The storm was building across the stars, and humanity was at its center. But this time they weren't fighting alone. This time they had allies who believed in freedom. This time they were going to win. General Chris Parker walked through the burning ruins of what had been a Velthan military base on the planet Rigel 7. 20 years after Earth's destruction, the galaxy was on fire with rebellion, and humanity was leading the charge. Chris commanded ground forces for the Human Liberation Front, and his job was to make sure that liberated worlds stayed free. "Another mind control facility destroyed," reported Major Tony Baker, gesturing toward the smoking wreckage of a crystalline building. "That's the 5th one this month. The Velthans are running out of ways to keep their slave populations under control." Chris nodded as he watched freed Rigelian civilians emerge from underground shelters. These people had been mentally enslaved for 3 generations, forced to mine rare crystals for Velthan weapons. Now they were free, and the look of wonder in their eyes made every battle worth fighting. The galaxy had become a very different place since humanity revealed itself. What had started as isolated human strikes had grown into a full-scale galactic civil war. 17 star systems had formally joined the Free Alliance, throwing off Coalition rule and declaring independence. Dozens more were fighting their own liberation wars. Commander Rachel Stone worked from the diplomatic vessel New Horizon, trying to build bridges between the dozens of species that were joining their cause. Rachel had discovered she had a talent for understanding alien cultures and finding common ground between races that had been enemies for centuries. "The Centauran Republic wants to join the Alliance," she reported during the daily command briefing. "They're offering their entire merchant fleet to help with supply lines." "What do they want in return?" asked Fleet Admiral Jennifer Clark, who had taken overall command of humanity's military forces. Jennifer was a survivor of the original Earth Defense Fleet, and she understood that every alliance came with a price. "Protection from Coalition retaliation," Rachel answered. "The Velthans have already threatened to glass their homeworld if they don't return to the Coalition." Jennifer's face hardened. "Then we protect them. That's what the Alliance is for." The Coalition was growing more desperate with each passing month. Their carefully maintained control over the galaxy was crumbling as world after world declared independence. The Velthan High Command had responded by becoming more brutal, using planet-killer weapons against rebellious worlds as examples to others who might consider revolt. The destruction of New Altair shocked the galaxy. The Coalition didn't just attack military targets. They completely destroyed the planet's biosphere, killing 6 billion people in a matter of hours. The message was clear: submit or die. Dr. Alex Johnson studied the sensor readings from New Altair's destruction with growing horror. "They're not just trying to win the war," he told the other leaders during an emergency meeting. "They're trying to terrorize everyone into submission. This is genocide on a galactic scale." Captain Dan Foster had been conducting surveillance missions deep in Coalition space, gathering intelligence on their military capabilities and strategic plans. What he discovered changed everything. "They're planning something called Operation Final Solution," Dan reported grimly. "Complete extermination of every species that has joined the rebellion. They're going to sterilize entire star systems. President Laura Hayes had been elected as humanity's first civilian leader since Earth's destruction. Laura understood that winning the war was only half the battle. They also had to show the galaxy that there was a better way to live than under coalition rule. Need to respond to New Altair, she told the military commanders. But we need to respond in a way that shows we're different from them. We don't commit genocide, even against our enemies. The response came in the form of the largest military operation in galactic history. Over 1,500 ships from the Free Alliance converged on the Vielthan fortress world of Crystal Prime. The planet was one of the Coalition's most heavily defended positions, protected by orbital defense stations and an entire battle fleet. General Chris Parker led the ground assault while Admiral Jennifer Clark commanded the space battle. The fighting was fierce and brutal, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Free Alliance had superior technology, better tactics, and most importantly, they were fighting for something they believed in. When Crystal Prime fell, the Alliance forces did something that shocked the galaxy. Instead of enslaving or executing their prisoners, they offered medical treatment to the wounded and fair trials for war criminals. Vielthan civilians were relocated safely to other worlds, and those who wanted to join the rebellion were welcomed into the Alliance. "We're not conquerors," Laura Hayes announced in a broadcast that reached every inhabited system. "We're liberators. We're fighting to create a galaxy where every species can live free from fear and oppression." The Coalition's response was swift and predictable. They began deploying their most powerful weapons, ancient devices from the galaxy's previous civilization that could destroy entire solar systems. The first target was the Free Alliance capital at Haven Prime. Commander Steve Mitchell was working in the Deep Space Monitoring Station when the sensors detected something that made his blood freeze. A Coalition dreadnought the size of a small moon was approaching Haven Prime, and it was carrying a Starkiller weapon. "All ships, this is Haven Control," Steve broadcasted frantically. "Evacuate the system immediately. They're going to try to make our sun go supernova." The evacuation of Haven Prime became another legend in humanity's growing mythology. In just 18 hours, over 2 billion people and countless ships fled to safety. When the Coalition weapon fired, it found only empty space where the Free Alliance capital had been. But the Alliance had been watching, learning, and preparing. As the Coalition dreadnought celebrated its victory over an abandoned system, human ships appeared around it like hunting wolves. The massive vessel found itself surrounded by the entire Free Alliance fleet, trapped with nowhere to run. "Coalition vessel, this is Admiral Clark," Jennifer broadcasted. "You have committed an act of stellar genocide. Surrender now or face the consequences." The Coalition commander chose to fight. It was his last mistake. The destruction of the Coalition superweapon sent shockwaves through both sides of the conflict. The Alliance had proven they could defeat even the Coalition's most powerful weapons. More importantly, they had shown mercy to the crews who surrendered, treating them as prisoners rather than executing them. Ryan Phillips brought intelligence from the Coalition capital that confirmed what everyone had suspected. "Their government is falling apart," he reported. "Half the Hegemony Council wants to negotiate peace. The other half wants to activate every ancient weapon they can find and burn the galaxy to ash rather than lose control." "Which side is winning?" Sam Turner asked. Sam had taken over coordination of the Alliance's intelligence operations, and he knew that the Coalition's internal politics would determine the war's final phase. "Neither," Ryan answered. "That's the problem. They're paralyzed by indecision, which makes them more dangerous than ever. Desperate people do desperate things." The proof of that desperation came when Coalition forces attempted to destroy the galactic core itself. Ancient weapons older than any living species were activated in a last-ditch attempt to prevent the Alliance from winning. If they couldn't rule the galaxy, they would destroy it entirely. Commander Steve Mitchell found himself at the center of the galaxy's greatest crisis, working frantically with scientists from dozens of species to prevent the ultimate catastrophe. The ancient weapons were counting down to activation, and if they fired, every star in the galaxy would die. "We need to shut them down manually," Steve told the emergency response team. "Someone has to get close enough to the core to override the weapons directly." It was a suicide mission, but Steve volunteered immediately. So did thousands of others from across the Alliance. In the end, it was a joint team of humans and their alien allies who flew directly into the galactic maelstrom, fighting their way through Coalition defenses to reach the ancient weapons. The mission succeeded, but barely. The galaxy was saved, but the cost had been enormous. The Coalition's final desperate act had failed, but it had shown everyone just how far they were willing to go to maintain their power. As the smoke cleared from the final battles, it became obvious that the war was over. The Coalition of Seven was finished, broken apart by their own extremism and the united resistance of the free peoples of the galaxy. But now came the hardest part: building something better from the ruins. Fleet Admiral Jennifer Clark stood on the bridge of the massive battleship Humanity's Dawn, watching the final Coalition fleet surrender at the ancient space station called Nexus Prime. 25 years had passed since Earth burned, and today marked the end of the longest war in galactic history. Around her flagship, over 2,000 ships of the Free Alliance waited in perfect formation, representing dozens of species united in their fight for freedom. Coalition Fleet Command. "This is Admiral Clark," she broadcasted across all frequencies. "You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to the laws of war." The response came from Admiral Zethkar, the last Velthan military commander still fighting. His crystalline voice carried centuries of arrogance and hatred. "We will never surrender to inferior species. We ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years before you even learned to use fire. Then you choose to die for nothing," Jennifer replied sadly. "All Alliance ships, you are authorized to use whatever force is necessary." But the Coalition Admiral never got the chance to make his final stand. His own officers, tired of a war they could never win, stunned him with their own weapons and transmitted their surrender. Even among the Coalition's most loyal forces, the will to fight had finally broken. President Laura Hayes walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime as Alliance engineers worked to repair decades of damage. The massive space station had been the political center of the galaxy for thousands of years, and now it would serve that role again under very different management. Laura had been chosen by the people of the Free Alliance to lead them into whatever came next. "The Galactic Council chambers are almost ready," reported Commander Amy Rodriguez, who had become Laura's chief of security. "Representatives from over 300 worlds are coming for the peace conference." Laura nodded as she looked out through the station's huge windows at the fleet of ships from countless different species. "Amy, do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing? We've got the power to rule the galaxy now. Maybe some people think we should use it." Amy smiled. "That's exactly why you're the right person for this job. Anyone who wants power probably shouldn't have it." General Chris Parker was dealing with the practical problems of occupation and reconstruction. Dozens of worlds that had been loyal to the Coalition were now free, but freedom came with chaos. Millions of former slaves needed new homes. War criminals had to be tried and sentenced. Entire planetary governments had to be rebuilt from nothing. "The Velthan homeworld is requesting aid," reported Major Tony Baker during their daily briefing. "Their crystal cities are starving because they never learned to grow their own food. They use slaves for everything," Chris sighed. "Send them food and medical supplies. And send teachers too. They need to learn how to take care of themselves. It would have been easy to let their former enemies suffer. Most of the Alliance species wanted revenge against the Coalition races that had oppressed them for so long. But humanity had learned something important during their long exile. Hatred was a poison that hurt the one who carried it more than the one it was aimed at." Dr. Alex Johnson worked in the medical centers treating wounded soldiers from both sides of the conflict. Coalition prisoners received the same care as Alliance heroes, something that confused and amazed the former enemy forces. They had expected execution or slavery, not healing and rehabilitation. "Why are you helping us?" asked a wounded Corthex soldier as Alex checked his artificial limbs. "We tried to wipe out your entire species." Alex paused in his work, thinking about all the friends he had lost during the war. "Because someone has to break the cycle," he said finally. "If we treat you like animals, then we become no better than the Coalition was." The trials of Coalition war criminals became the most important legal proceedings in galactic history. Instead of simple revenge, the Alliance created courts that followed rules of evidence and allowed defendants to present their cases. Many Coalition leaders were sentenced to prison or exile, but they were sentenced fairly after proper trials. Captain Dan Foster had been chosen to lead the new Galactic Security Force, an organization designed to prevent another coalition from ever rising to power. Ships from dozens of species served under his command, patrolling space lanes and protecting smaller worlds from pirates and warlords. The galaxy is a big place, Dan told his officers during their first official meeting. We can't be everywhere, but we can make sure that everyone knows someone is watching, someone who will come to help if they call. Commander Steve Mitchell worked with scientists from across the galaxy to study and secure the ancient weapons that had nearly destroyed all life. These artifacts from the galaxy's previous civilization were too dangerous to use, but too important to destroy. They would be studied, understood, and kept safe so that no one could ever threaten to unmake the stars again. The weapons are responding to our security protocols, Steve reported to the Alliance leadership. They're locked down tight, but we need to make sure future generations understand what these things can do. The peace conference on Nexus Prime lasted for 6 months. Representatives from hundreds of worlds debated and argued about how to rebuild galactic civilization. There were fights, walkouts, and moments when it seemed like the whole process would collapse into chaos. But slowly, painfully, a new government began to take shape. President Laura Hayes addressed the final session of the conference from the same chamber where the Coalition had once planned humanity's destruction. We gather here not as conquerors and conquered, she said, but as free people choosing to work together. The galactic compact we create today must be built on one simple principle. Never again will one species have the power to destroy another. The Galactic Compact established the Terran Protectorate, a peacekeeping force led by humanity, but including all Alliance species. It created the Universal Council, where every inhabited world had a voice regardless of size or power. Most importantly, it guaranteed certain basic rights to all sentient beings: the right to life, the right to freedom, and the right to determine their own destiny. Ryan Phillips had spent years infiltrating enemy organizations, but now he worked openly as the first director of interspecies relations. His job was to help the hundreds of different cultures in the galaxy learn to live together peacefully. It wasn't easy work, but it was necessary. The former Coalition species are having the hardest time adjusting, he reported to Laura during one of their private meetings. They're not used to having equals instead of subjects. They'll learn, Laura said confidently. Everyone can learn if they want to. Captain Sam Turner, the man who had led humanity's survivors through their darkest years, chose not to take a position in the new government. Instead, he became something much more important: a teacher. On the new world of New Terra, humanity's chosen capital, Sam taught history to children from dozens of different species. Remember, he told his mixed class of human, Altarian, and former Coalition children, the most important lesson of the war isn't that we won, it's that we chose to win the right way. Power without justice is just another kind of slavery. The memorial to Earth was built in the exact center of New Terra's capital city. It was a simple crystal monument that listed the names of every human who had died in the Great Erasure, along with the names of all the other species the Coalition had destroyed over the centuries. At the base of the monument were carved the words that had become humanity's motto: never forget, never again. Admiral Kate Morgan commanded the deep space exploration fleets that were mapping the galaxy beyond Coalition territory. Her ships carried diplomats and scientists to make contact with civilizations that had hidden themselves during the Long War. Each new species they met was invited to join the growing community of free worlds. There's a whole galaxy out there we never knew existed, Kate reported during one of her visits to New Terra. Thousands of species that went into hiding when the Coalition rose to power. They're coming out now, ready to be part of something better. Engineer Tony Baker had finally found a use for his talents that didn't involve building weapons. His new storm drive engines powered exploration ships and cargo vessels that carried trade and friendship to every corner of the galaxy. The same technology that had once hidden human warships now connected peaceful worlds. 50 years after the end of the war, former President Laura Hayes walked through the gardens of New Terra University with her granddaughter. The young woman was preparing to graduate with a degree in xenobiology, planning to spend her life studying the incredible diversity of life the galaxy contained. Grandmother, the young woman asked, do you ever regret not taking revenge on the Coalition? Some people say humanity was too soft on their enemies. Laura smiled as she watched children from dozens of species playing together in the university courtyards. Revenge would have felt good for a while, she said, but this feels good forever. In the deepest archives of New Terra, the records from Operation Phoenix were still preserved. The complete genetic and cultural heritage of old Earth, saved by a few desperate scientists in humanity's darkest hour, but now they served a different purpose. They reminded everyone of what had been lost when people chose hatred over hope.